Big shout out to today's video sponsor, Linsoul. Check out their fantastic deals in the links in the video description. The Fiio FH11 is an FD11 but with more punch. So which should you buy? Let's find out. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas and thanks to Fiio for sending these out for a review. They don't get to see this video before you or get any editorial input, so I want to get that out of the way. It's funny because the FH11 looks like an FD11 but in dark mode with its more gunmetal-like shell and bronze cable, but the sound signature is actually the complete opposite of that. They sound brighter and airier than the FD11. This is likely due to the inclusion of a balanced armature alongside the 10mm dynamic in the FH11. This is about 20% more expensive than the FD11 here in the UK at around £55. And that makes it relatively attainable to most people, but still a chunky amount to spend on an IEM. This is competing with the aforementioned FD11 by Fiio, but also the SIMGOT EW200 and of course the triple win times HBB Kailua. The FH11 has a metal shell with what Fiio calls a bionic conch shape, the same shape as the FD11, which I found to be comfortable, yet a little slippery and actually quite hard to get in and out of your ears. It's not impossible by any means, it's just a bit fiddly if you're not used to it. They're relatively heavy without feeling overbearing. The recessed 2-pin cable could be a bit of a pig to replace, but the cable itself is of acceptable quality at this price point and terminates in a single-ended 3.5mm connector. You're treated to a selection of different silicone tips at small, medium and large, and aside from a case, which I would like to have seen at this price point, it's a pretty comprehensive package. Sound-wise, I think the Kailua is more refined in the technical details. I think the EW200 sounds far smoother with the more forward mid-range, but the main IEM I'll be comparing these to is the FD11 since they are just so closely matched. Testing through both my iFi Zendac V2 and my MacBook Pro's output, I found them to be almost bang on in terms of sensitivity, but the FH11 has the ability to go higher with its balanced armature driver, delivering a certain crispness that you just don't find with a single dynamic, or at least the one in the FD11. The FH11 soundstage also felt significantly wider, which is pretty impressive given the FD11's never sounded closed off at all. The FD11 certainly goes lower than the FH11. There's less bass with these, though there certainly is enough bass to satisfy many bass heads. There becomes a point actually where the mid-bass bleeds into the mids at times. I wouldn't call these the most technically accurate, there is a fair amount of mid-bass bleed. And to be fair, what you're buying these for is soundstage, dynamic sound, which is to say bright but with a nice amount of texture. Nothing sounds flat, it's a very V-shaped kind of sound with an emphasis on treble. Male vocals are certainly recessed or pulled back compared to guitars, bass guitars and cymbals, and this is basically the opposite of the EW200. Speaking of which, if you're sensitive to sibilants, these might not be for you. The balanced armature makes the upper frequencies pop, but that could be a bit much for people who just aren't into that sound or aren't used to it. I found that audio fatigue hit in around the 5-hour mark at moderate volumes, where some other sets that I've listened to can keep going for another 2 hours before I need to take them out of my ears. Physically, I felt no fatigue due to the shape of the shells. They did pop out every so often though, which could be fixed by just using some more decent sealing foam tips. They tend to keep IEMs in my ears a lot longer. This set is suited to bass heavy stuff like hip hop, rock, metal, hard hitting, but due to the lack of pin sharp technical ability, I found that when you're listening to particularly busy tracks, they can become a little bit muddy, which is obviously not great. Pop music sounded fairly decent with these, but of course that music tends to be more basic and general, and you don't tend to listen to that kind of thing for hi-fi kind of levels, so it's a bit of a different genre. I don't think that its high upper mid frequency energy pairs particularly well with the dullness low down, as you end up with a bit of an imbalance that can work for some tracks but definitely not for others, and you'll be sat there constantly moving the dial back and forth on your headphone amp, with each track basically giving you a different level of output. For games, the FH11 soundstage makes them really immersive, and their imaging is good enough to pick out gunshots in competitive shooters, but also due to the muddiness, footsteps can end up kind of bleeding into the background. This is particularly apparent in the new CS2 beta that I got to try out and I've been absolutely on the fence about. You thought I was going to say loving that, it really is back and forth on that thing. Let me know in the comments if you have the CS2 beta, by the way, and how you're feeling on it. I also tried the FH11 playing Apex Legends, and they're usable, but they're not particularly suited to competitive shooters due to that lack of real technical ability. Instrument separation, footstep separation, that kind of thing. For anything else though, like single player titles, these are more than enough, and actually I think you'll enjoy your time with them. A great example is emulation stuff or immersive story games. That low down punch, that emphasis in the sparkle gives you a very textured sound and keeps you immersed in the game, of course along with that great soundstage as well. I've been getting back into Gran Turismo 7 and these have been great for that game. The same goes for Minecraft actually. Those new cave systems are absolutely mad. I will never get over them. The Fiio FH11 can be, and certainly are, enjoyable. Their impressive soundstage makes them pretty great for listening to live recordings, and studio stuff sounds just as good as well, as long as you're not really nitpicky about the little details. But I'd be going for the Kailua for that cleaner, more analytical sound anyway. Fio's own FD11 competes because it just goes so low and is more of a laid back, lean back IEM. And of course, I won't go a video without imploring you to check out Moondrop's Chusu. They are just so good for the price. I also have a video coming out about a certain IM very closely priced to this that will absolutely knock your socks off, so stay tuned for that. A big thanks to Fiio for sending the FH11 out. I have another weird IM review coming out from Fiio very soon, so hit subscribe and stay tuned for that, and hit like if you enjoyed it. My gosh, it is absolutely boiling in here. Maybe like 30 degrees C, no air conditioning. It's just awful. Anyway, I've been Ryan Thomas and I'll catch you later. Cheers.